Welcome to another edition of Cheers to Careers. I'm Steve Ridinghouse, the Career Outreach Coordinator at the School of Journalism and Mass Communications at KU.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Cheers to Careers. I'm Steve Ridinghouse, the Career Outreach Coordinator for the KU School of Journalism and Mass Communications. Today we are joined by KU alum Courtney McCain. She's an EMS lab instructor at Johnson County Community College's Emergency Medical Sciences program. Welcome, Courtney.
Welcome. Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be back on the Hill.
I believe this is our 55th or 56th episode. I admit you're our first one that has that EMS background. So how did journalism help prepare you for this role?
Oh my. There are so many facets of journalism that merge very well with EMS. I already had the ability to interview people and to ask them some pretty pointed questions. In EMS, you don't have a lot of time. You don't have a lot of get to know you time, and sometimes, we need to ask some, again, very personal and blunt questions for people so that we might assist them. And in journalism, that also occurs. And so having those interview skills certainly is very important. The other thing that was very helpful is that in EMS, we have to fill out a run report afterward, just describing everything that happened. Well, what do we do in journalism? We go find out what happened, the where, why, when, who, what, and then we write a little story about it. And in EMS, a lot of the same was true. It's a different format, but I already knew how to craft that story, and so that was very easy for me.
So I know we talked briefly beforehand, a TV show that a lot of people from our generation are familiar with. So what was the inspiration for an EMS career?
Since I can remember, and I was very young, I want to say I was 4 or 5 years old, there was a show called Emergency that was on TV, and I just fell in love with what I saw happening there, and I had always had a long time aspiration of wanting to take care of people. But at the time, this was in the early 1970s, there were very few women who participated in what is now known as pre-hospital care. And so that was something that always just in the back of my mind. But I don't think I got sidetracked into journalism. I think I kind of found it very naturally through being around it all the time. So there were always those two elements that were very much a part of my life.
And you actually had a chance to meet some of the Emergency main characters, correct?
I did, yeah. Kevin Tighe and Randy Mantooth have been fixtures at Emergency Medical Services conferences. And that was, I think, every kid who grew up watching that program and then became EMTs or paramedics or firefighters because of that inspiration. That's a big deal to meet your heroes, so to speak.
And you touched on briefly, you are from a newspaper family.
I am.
Your dad, Tom, longtime advisor, general manager at the UDK, I think from like 86 to 2001, I believe, 1986 to 2001. Your mom, a longtime editor, writer. So was it a natural for you to gravitate towards journalism, or was there some pushback?
Well, I don't think there was any pushback. I don't know that initially they knew that I had any interest in it. I was very fortunate when I was in high school to have a great English teacher, Gloria Flynn, who complimented my writing. And suddenly I had an interest in it. If I thought, gosh, maybe they think I'm a good writer, maybe I might check this out a little bit. And so I learned more about, I paid more attention when I was at the newspaper, because if you're a newspaper kid, you hang out at the paper a lot while your parents work. And so once I was there, now interested in the writing profession, in the reporting profession, in the photography profession, I did investigate more about it, and it seemed like it was a good fit. And so that really inspired me to check out more about it and then realize that I liked this. I think I'm going to give this a shot.
And it seems like over time you've been able to combine like journalism and the EMS background, because you've done some like writing and photography for actual publications directed at EMS, correct?
Oh yes. I got interested in EMS in 1991 right after I graduated. Well, interested again in EMS right after I graduated from KU. I had a job at the Arkansas City Traveler and was assigned a beat that at the time I really didn't like. I was hired as a features reporter, and then my beat changed to city editor. And part of that beat was to go get the police notes, the fire notes, all the responses that they made. And I became a little more interested just being around it. They encouraged me at the fire station to take a first responder class. And the hook was pretty much set because I wasn't having a great experience at the newspaper. And I remember calling my dad at the time and saying, what would you think of me leaving the profession briefly? I said briefly. And becoming a paramedic and really specializing in this, because I really want to do this professionally, but also I'd love to eventually write about it in a journalism capacity. And he was on board with it. I think he knew that I wasn't happy, and he wanted me to fulfill everything that I wanted to do. And so he was very supportive. I think there was a little wistfulness because, gosh, you went through 4 years of school, and
right.
But at the same time, I got into EMS in 1991. I ultimately got my paramedic, which is an advanced level pre-hospital care provider, in 1993. And from then on, I worked as a paramedic in Winfield, Kansas, Wichita, and then also Montgomery County Hospital District, just north of Houston, Texas.
Okay.
And while I was in Houston, I had done some writing here in Kansas in the late 90s for the Kansas EMS Association. And while I was at a conference, I was introduced to Jim Page, who was one of the developing writers for Emergency. And he was now the publisher of the Journal of EMS. And after some discussion, I was brought aboard as a contributing photographer and writer for the Journal of EMS in 2002, I think. Okay. And through the Journal of EMS, multiple other public safety communications publications, fire rescue, I did sort of freelance and contributing work in subjects and in photography related to those disciplines. And the focus was on the work that public safety personnel were doing, not on the patients. I was very careful and respectful if I was riding along to take pictures to never picture anything that was recognizable in a patient. That's something that I feel very passionately about, is a patient's right to confidentiality. Especially at the most vulnerable time of their lives.
And can you trace some of that back to, like, I assume you took a media ethics course at KU? Oh, did that
I did take some ethics courses, and I remember my father and I having some rather robust conversations about just because you can doesn't mean that you should.
Right.
And so that definitely played a role. Respect for the subject, respect for the subject matter, and being responsible with it.
And I noticed on your resume during your time with the Daily Kansan, you actually had a medical reporter beat. Mm-hmm. What was that experience like?
Well, I wish I had written more stories. I look back now and I think, because advanced reporting, anybody who takes advanced reporting knows that you might as well go drop all your other classes because you're going to be busy with your job with the Kansan. I wished I had dug deeper into some of the stories. I did do some good stuff. I learned a heck of a lot. I loved getting to speak with the people and learning what was going on at Watkins Health Center, what was going on here on campus, and especially what was going on at the University of Kansas Medical Center. So that was a big treat for me, and that, I guess, kind of laid the groundwork. That was in the fall of 1990. That kind of laid the groundwork for later bailing out of general news.
And I know your father had an affinity for red pens. Were you ever?
Oh yeah.
Were you ever a victim of the red pen? Or?
Oh, frequently. I was red penned when I was in elementary school.
Oh wow.
That was just what it was like. Okay, I brought home a paper and put it up on the refrigerator, and well, there were some issues with it, and I found out later, and I capitalized that next time, and so I didn't think that it was overly critical. I thought, oh, he's helping me out. That was always my perception of it.
And I know one of your classmates, Joseph, actually created a scholarship, I think, named after the glorious red pen. Mm-hmm. And I think you even said at your father's service, didn't you have a collection of red pens that people could take? Or?
We did. Okay. We did. At his celebration of life, he passed away after his celebration of life. On each table, We had spread out a number of publications from throughout the state of Kansas, where he worked for the Kansas Press Association after his retirement here from KU. We had a selection of those newspapers from across the state, and then in the middle we had a coffee mug with red pens in them, and we encouraged those who were attending his celebration to take a red pen with them, and just in remembrance of my dad, and in all of the input he had, and the influence he certainly had through students.
And I know your dad is an inductee in the Kansas Newspaper Hall of Fame.
Yes.
I know your mom, Jeannie, she'll be inducted this Friday posthumously.
Yes.
And I think you have the honor of speaking on her behalf,
I
correct?
I will be. I'm really, really just, I think she'd be so humbled to be part of this class that's being inducted. So many incredible journalists. And I think that would really be her first reaction is, what, me? And then I think incredibly proud, and I know my dad would be incredibly proud.
And I think I remember reading a story about your mom. Didn't they refer to her as kind of the newsroom mom?
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
And she was known for making, what, treats and...
She was the newsroom mom. And now granted, she had been a journalist.
Right.
She worked for Better Homes and Gardens, for the Kansas City Star, innumerable freelancing opportunities at multiple publications. And so I think she brought some of that information to the students kind of as more like a mentor. And in addition to that, she brought lemon squares, black cat cookies. Of note, in my now career with Johnson County, I am bringing black cat cookies tonight.
Nice.
For the students who are in an EMR class who got scheduled on Halloween evening, and those who show up will receive a black cat cookie, and that was my mom's recipe. Okay. So that's a neat transition.
So what was her kind of proofreading tool of choice? Was she in the red markers, or did she stay away from that?
Her proofreading tool was verbosity.
Okay.
She had, in any color of ink, typically, whatever she had access to, typically a black pen, she would draw a little arrow and write in the margins.
Nice.
And describe, this is why this probably should be rethought or changed, or just a side note for the writer. Oh, by the way, did you know about this situation? I met so-and-so with involving this issue, or just a little tidbit to help them connect other elements of it.
And kind of going back to your KU days, I noticed you had about 2 or 3 internships. Can you talk about the value of having those internships early in your career?
Yeah, those really were my first real jobs. And the responsibility of carrying a beat, the responsibility of, again, getting to know my subject matter. Sometimes I was successful with it, and other times I really struggled. I really struggled with meetings where I had to sit still and take in all this information, and a lot of it went over my head, and then I would need to do a lot of research later to find out what was it they were talking about. And then other stuff I went in there and just immediately understood. And so I think that's something that a lot of, with reporting, you have to report on any subject matter and become what I call a basic expert at it in order to write the story successfully, so that people can have a little understanding of what's going on. That doesn't happen overnight, and in my case it certainly didn't. But I did have a lot of really great experiences at the, I was at the Iola Register for a summer. I was at the Wichita Eagle for a summer. And then throughout that, I worked kind of as a stringer for the Fort Scott Tribune. That was my first ever opportunity to really spread my wings as a writer and a photographer. And so I'm just so grateful for each experience that I had.
So kind of small paper, large paper. Any difference with internships, or were they?
The small paper, you have so many hats that you wear, and I appreciate that type of variety. I'm somebody that it's difficult for me to write about the same thing over and over and over again, even though, yes, I can then expand upon knowledge I've regained. I like getting to meet different people. At heart, I'm a community journalist, and there are a lot of different things that go on in the community. And so I appreciated, I think, the smaller paper just from me personally, really covering the community, living in the community, being part of the community. That was my big appreciation for it. But the Eagle very definitely sharpened my skills, and I learned so much from working in a large newsroom with multiple people. And that was the first opportunity I'd ever had to write a story with another reporter, which we now know just in reading publications today, that's a really important skill to learn to do, to collaborate.
And I think both your parents, they both had experience kind of large paper, small paper too, right, throughout their career?
My mom, her primary experience before she and my dad met at the Kansas City Star, they both kind of cut their teeth on college journalism. My dad was a graduate of University of Missouri, and my mom, Oklahoma State University, and they had both been quite active with their college newspapers. Okay. And then my mother did an internship at the Kansas City Star, and then ultimately got a job as a home economics reporter there. And so it was always a large paper for her. My dad had also worked, in addition to the University of Missouri student paper, I believe he also worked for a short time in Amarillo, Texas, and then transitioned to the Kansas City Star. But he, in mid, 1979, 1980, he decided to move us from Kansas City to Fort Scott, so that we could experience a small town as living, because it's totally different from living in a big city to a small town. And both my brother and I, as much as we love Kansas City and continue to today, Fort Scott was really where we came of age and really appreciated being a part of a community. And that all kind of translated later on to journalism, I guess.
So you graduated from KU early 90s. Fast forward 30 years later, do you have any idea you would be doing this?
No.
When you graduated? Okay.
No, I knew when I was first, after I had become a paramedic, there is a transition phase. You get your patch, you get your certification. Okay, they turn you loose, and now you're a paramedic. And there's a phase where you're scared to death because you want to do everything you're trained to do, but you really never know what you're going to be running from call to call. And so there's that phase where you're very nervous, you're excited to finally get to do this, and then the scared part wears off a little bit, and then you just feel very confident. And then you start getting students who are learning to be EMTs or paramedics. And that was where I first really thought, I'd like to teach this someday. I appreciated the one-on-one mentoring and just seeing a student's face light up when they realized, that's what okay, I get it now. And then you would see the change on the next call that they really didn't understand. And so that was where I first really started thinking, I'd like to teach this someday, but I need more experience to do it successfully.
Do you have any idea how many students you've had an impact or you've trained?
I have no idea.
I mean, I would assume there's
no
a
idea.
Tremendous satisfaction, like you said, when that light goes off and
that
you're kind of passing the torch.
I mean, honestly, I think I've had dozens of students that have, ridden along with me aboard ambulances, both in Winfield, but especially in Texas. I was a field training officer in Texas, and so we had students frequently, and also new employees came to train with me. So mentoring is just something that I really grew to love. Standing in front of a classroom of students is an entirely different beast, and that took some time, again, for me to really learn how to do that successfully. So I feel really lucky that I've been able to do both. And the average paramedic in the United States, just because of the wear and tear on our bodies, when I got into EMS, there was no such thing as a power lift stretcher. Everything was carried everywhere. Back injuries and shoulder injuries, they're still pretty common, but they're not as common now because now we have safe lifting and everything. So at the time I got into EMS, the average paramedic's career lasted 6 years. So when you think about the level of training that you go through, and now it's only 6 years before you start getting injured. I've hung in there for a long time, and I haven't been on the truck all the time, but I've been able to teach and I've been able to do other things, including journalism, to stay active in my own way.
And one last question before you have to go. I think you're proof that journalism degree or just that journalism foundation can prepare you for so many different tasks. I mean, what advice do you have to say our soon-to-be journalism grads
Oh my gosh.
as they embark on their careers or change careers? I guess.
Yeah, and I hope that they retain their journalism instincts, and I hope that they find something that they really want to be good at, to specialize at. If they want to be a community journalist, literally becoming part of that community and covering it very well is important. Sharpen your interviewing skills, because that's going to take you far in any career that you're in. And again, be the example. If you are a writer, be the example to people who are reading your material and learning from it about proper usage, proper punctuation. We're seeing a lot of this happening now. So we want to try to remind people of what good journalism is.
Well, again, Courtney, I appreciate you taking the time to join us.
Thank you.
Thanks for having your coffee mug. And I want to say cheers to your careers. Thanks, Courtney.
Thank you. Cheers.